This video is on limits. So suppose that we do not know the value of a function a, and if f of x gets closer and closer to a particular value, when x gets closer to a, then it is said to have a limit. So it's all about what value a function is approaching. First example, suggest the limit of sine x divided by pi times x on 180 as x tends to 0 where x is in degrees. So in this case, we want to look at what y value is this function approaching as x gets closer to 0 from either side of the equation. In the IB, you are just expected to be able to do this by using a graph or a table, so I will show you on the calculator how they both work. On the calculator, what we want to do is we want to go to a graph. And in here, we're just going to enter the equation. One thing to note here is the question did want it into degrees, so we just need to double check in the top corner here that our calculator is in degrees too. Then we can just type in our equation. And when we graph it, it looks like this. Now, the reason it looks like a straight line is because of the zoom of the graph, but that's fine, that doesn't matter. If you did want to see what the graph looked like, you could zoom out and see what the graph looks like as a whole. But as we only want to look at x around the point of when it is 0, this graph here will be fine. Now, we're wanting to know what is the limit of this function as x tends to 0. So as x comes towards 0 from both sides, so you can come from the positive side towards 0 or from the negative side to 0, what y value is that approaching? Now here it looks like it is approaching 1, and that is what the limit would be. In this situation, 1 is actually undefined. When x equals 0, the solution is undefined. With a limit, that doesn't matter. We just want to know what value it is approaching. So often, and sometimes with a graph, we can just see that, and we can see that here it is 1. The other way is by a table. So on your calculator, from here we go menu, table, and split screen. And it'll bring up a table as well of values. Now we want to when x is getting closer to 0. And you can see there, when it's 0 is undefined, and either side, the numbers are getting closer and closer to 1. Which also backs up what we said before about the limit being 1. In the table, you can change the steps. So here, the x values are changing by 1 each time. If you went to menu again, in table, you can go to edit table settings, number 5. You can put where the table starts and a step. So if we made this maybe it to go up in 0.1 steps, you'll see here that it goes -1, 0.9, -0.8, etc. So we've changed the step of the x value. And once again, we can see now as well, even more, that the number is getting closer and closer to 1 from either side of the equation when x gets closer to 0. So therefore, we can determine that the limit of this function is 1. As we said, the limit equaled 1. Now example 2, use your calculator or your GDC to suggest the limit of 2x squared minus 8x divided by x minus 4 as x tends towards 4. So once again, you do this yourself, go to your calculator, look at the graph and also look at the table and see if you can figure it out. If you did, you should have got the limit equal to 8. And that is limits.